Jai.
Ishama Padmanabha Swami Maharaj Bhakti Devi ki jai.
Jai.
Yogamaya Paramasa ki jai. Kapishwar Mahadev ki jai. Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Sudasar Shakti ki jai. Shri Purushottam Chaitra ki jai.
Jai.
Shri Bhagavan ki jai. Bhagavan Shri Maharaj ki jai.
Jai.
Ventaraj Shri Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Shri Sankirtan ki jai.
Jai.
Ventar Bhakti Vaishnava Bhumi ki jai.
Jai.
Samagata Bhakta Bhumi ki jai.
Jai.
Nitai Goparanandi.
Hari Hari Bol.
Malukar, I edited the book and changed it to some extent.
He told me he didn't really change it. He told me that Gurudev added some because the original Jagannath Rath Yatra book that they made in Hindi. So there are some parts that were not in the English of this book, this first version, because this was taken only from Gurudev's lectures in the West. So they've added some. They've made it better and more complete.
Added and subtracted, or added?
I don't think they subtracted much. Well, maybe because they're matching. They're matching Gurudev's Hindi.
I see.
With the English. So in some places he's mentioned more in Hindi, and it eliminates the necessity of what he had in the English there.
Oh, that's right.
Something like that. Jai Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jataha Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishwakan Vitamscha Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauda Tishe He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jayatam Shuruto Pangor Mamamanda Mater Gati Matsarvasva Padam Bojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadrumadha Srimad Ratnagar Singhasanasto Srimad Radha Srila Govinda Devo Preshtalibhi Sevyamano Smarami Shiman Rasarasarambhi Vamshivata Tatakstitaha Karshana Venu Svanayar Gopir Gopinata Shriyestunaha Vrindai Tulsi Debai Priyai Keshavasya Cha Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhakta Avataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. First of all, I'm offering my unlimited Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Asto Tarasata Sri Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada. Then I'm offering my same unlimited Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Siksha Gurudevs, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Ashto Tarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj, and Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Ashto Tarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. I offer my unlimited Dandavat Pranams to the lotus feet of all of my Sri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga, and my Dandavat Pranams to all the Vaishnavas and all the Vaishnavis. Today being the day called Hera Panchami, or Lakshmi Vijay, means the victory of Lakshmi Devi. It's a very, very sweet, interesting festival. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in the mood of Rath Yatra, and he was performing his ecstatic dancing at Rath Yatra, so at that time the king of Puri, he told to the managers of the temple that we should perform this Lakshmi festival in such a way that we've never done before. I am opening up the entire treasury with all the storage rooms and everything to decorate in the most magnificent manner this palanquin which will carry Lakshmi, for the costumes of the dancing girls and all the hundreds of people who will be the servants of Lakshmi. And I want this to be performed in such a way that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will become so immersed in these moods. So they decorated. It's described in the verses. So Srila Gurudev, in this book called the Jagannath Rath Yatra, that's the title of the second edition in English. The first edition was called The Origin of Rath Yatra, and that edition was only coming from the lectures that Srila Gurudev gave in the West in English language. But later a book was produced in Hindi by the request of all the Vaishnavas, which was the same materials. And Gurudev added some. He added. And so this book called Jagannath Rath Yatra, it's compiled in a very nice way, that each chapter has subsections like this. So we're reading now what Srila Gurudev has told about this Hera Panchami festival. It's actually from the 14th chapter of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila. It's the chapter after the dancing at Rath Yatra.
May I ask a
Yeah.
basic question?
Mm.
Why does Mahaprabhu enjoy this pastime of Lakshmi coming to interfere or to stop what he's trying to enjoy with Jagannath?
Oh, that's because of the conversation that ensued. The conversation is all about the moods of the Braja Gopis as opposed to the moods of Lakshmi Devi. And this is showing the sweetness of Vrindavan and the sweetness of the praying of the Gopis, whereas the Lakshmi was exhibiting so much opulence, and it has quite a contrary or a different mood.
So by contrast...
By contrast, exactly. So that's why Mahaprabhu instigated a conversation with Swarup Damodar Goswami, who began to speak to Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu is not telling much, but Swarup Damodar Goswami is telling. And who is Swarup Damodar? Lalita Devi. Yes. So every year before Rath Yatra, before the Rath Yatra festival, every year, thousands of clay pots filled with water from holy places, from tirthas, that are situated all over India. They are brought for Lord Sri Jagannath's bathing festival, Snana Yatra. So that's about 2 weeks before Rath Yatra. With this water, the Abhishek of Sri Jagannath, Sri Baladev, and Sri Subhadra is performed. And because an excessive amount of water is used, they enact a pastime of illness, catching a cold. At that time, Lakshmi Devi takes them to her palace, where she locks the door for 15 days, and she cares for them. And as a result, they regain their health. Lord Jagannath Dev, he says to Lakshmi Ji, "Oh my dear, due to your care, we have become healthy, but we do not like being confined to the palace for so long. I desire to wander around outside for a few days for a change of atmosphere." Then Lakshmi Ji asked, "Oh Prabhu, how long will it be until you all return?" "Oh, we shall come back very soon," said Sri Jagannath Dev. Sri Lakshmi Ji agreed to Jagannath Dev's request. There was no apprehension in her mind because Sri Baladev and Sri Subhadra Ji were going along with him as chaperones. Thus, by Lakshmi Ji's agreement, Lord Jagannath Dev, along with Sri Baladev and Subhadra Ji, mounted their chariots and they left. Now that brings us to the... It just jumped to another chapter. Okay. Yeah, okay. So, there's a subsection here, Lakshmi Ji's exhibition of anger. When 5 days had elapsed, that's today, Panchami. When 5 days had elapsed, Lakshmi Ji began to wonder, "Where has my husband gone?" And he promised that he would come back very soon. But so many days have passed, and he has not returned. So Lakshmi Ji became incapable of tolerating Sri Jagannath's neglect of her by delaying his return. In her anger, she ordered all her maidservants to equip themselves with weapons. Then, like the commander-in-chief of an army, she set out to attack her husband. They searched and they searched for Sri Jagannath until they came to the Gundicha Mandir. It was there that they searched. Herati means search. Herati stands for Hera. Herati, they searched for him. That is why the residents of Orissa, the Utkal Vasis, they call this day Hera Panchami. Panchami refers to the 5th day of the Rath Yatra festival, as well as the 5th day of the waxing and the waning moon on the lunar calendar. Now, next section, Sriman Mahaprabhu's desire to see Har Panchami. So Sriman Mahaprabhu called Nilachala, he used to call Nilachala Dwarka. What is Nilachala? That's the temple. So he used to call that Dwarka, and he called the Gundicha Mandir Vrindavan. His purpose in doing so was to make the inhabitants of the world understand the difference between Dwarka and Vrindavan. So therefore, the day before Har Panchami, Sriman Mahaprabhu said to Sri Kashi Mishra, I, along with my devotees, we want to see the Har Panchami festival. So, in this way, Mahaprabhu is setting everything up. Then Kashi Mishra expressed Sriman Mahaprabhu's desire to King Prataparudra and asked the king to decorate Mahalakshmi Devi with very gorgeous gold ornaments and to hold such a magnificent festival that after seeing her opulence, everyone will be struck with wonder. The king was most elated to receive such a golden opportunity to perform service to Sriman Mahaprabhu. And he told Kashi Mishra that he could take whatever he wanted from the royal treasury. So on the day of Har Panchami, Kashi Mishra prepared for this pastime by getting hundreds of devotees to beautifully adorn themselves. And in the morning, Sriman Mahaprabhu took his devotees and he went inside the Gundicha Mandir for darshan of Sri Jagannath Dev. He then took them to Sri Jagannath Mandir to see the Har Panchami festival. Then Kashi Mishra treated him with great respect, and he had him seated in a beautiful spot next to the Singhadwar gates. So it has been described in the previous chapter that both the Brajvasis and the Dwarkavasis, they both have so much prema for Sri Krishna, but Sri Krishna is controlled only by the prema of the Brajvasis. And therefore on the day of the Har Panchami, Sriman Mahaprabhu asked Sri Sarup Damodar some questions with the purpose of establishing the glories of the Brajvasis' prema in the world. That's the answer to your question. Now comes the section, the discussion between Sriman Mahaprabhu and Sri Sarup Damodar. With the desire to hear about the speciality of rasa, by comparing the rasa of Vraja to the rasa of Vaikuntha, Sriman Mahaprabhu somewhat laughingly, he asked Srila Sarup Damodar, Yadyapi Jagannath Korin Dwarakai Vihar, Sahaja Prakata Kori Parama Uddar, Tatapi Vatsara Madhye Hoi Ekbar, Vrindavana Dekite Tar Utkanta Apar. Although Sri Jagannath Dev reigns in the Nilachala Mandir, which is Dwarkadam, and he engages in pastimes there, thus bestowing his supreme natural compassion upon the jivas, but still, once a year, he becomes overwhelmed with immense eagerness to see Vrindavan. Vrindavana sama e upavangan, taha deki bari utkantita hoy man. On both sides of the Baradanda, that's the Grand Road, now it's called Grand Road, but it's called Baradanda. On both sides are beautiful groves. Pointing toward those gardens, Sriman Mahaprabhu said, these gardens are identical to Vrindavan, therefore Sri Jagannath Dev remains extremely eager at heart to see them. Bahir hoite kore rathayatra chala, Sundara chale jai Prabhu chadi nila chala. Outwardly, Sri Jagannath mounts the chariot on the pretense of going to roam about in the gardens. So in this way, he leaves Nilachala, Dwarka, and he goes to Sundarachala, Vrindavan. So these are the two names. Nilachala means the Jagannath Mandir, and considered Dwarka. And Sundarachal means the Gundicha Mandir, and it's considered to be Vrindavan. So, Nana Pushyo Dhyane Tata Kele Ratri Dine Lakshmi Devi Re Sange Nahi Loy Ki Karane. Bhagavan sports and plays day and night in the various flower gardens there. But why does he not take Lakshmi Devi, the goddess of fortune, with him? So that's the question. That's what Mahaprabhu is asking to Swarup Damodar Goswami. Because why doesn't he take Lakshmi with him?
This is his arrangement to clarify.
Yes. So now the next section, which continues the same verses, is titled, Only the Gopis Have the Qualification to Enter Ras Leela. So this is now Swarup Damodar replying to Mahaprabhu. Swarup kahe, Shuno Prabhu, Karana ihar, Vrindavana, Kridate Lakshmir nahi adhikar. Lakshmi nahi adhikar. She does not have the qualification. So Swarup Damodar replied, please listen, O Prabhu. The reason for this is that Lakshmi Devi, the goddess of fortune, does not have the proper qualification to enter the playful pastimes of Vrindavan. It's called Vrindavan Kridate. So Krida means very playful pastimes. Then he goes on, Vrindavana Leelai Krishner Sahai Gopigan, Gopigan Bina Krishner Harite Nare Man. In the sweet pastimes of Vrindavan, the only assistants of Sri Krishna are the gopis. There are no others. But for them, no one can steal the mind of Krishna. Only the gopis can.
Even the flower boys,
No one can steal Krishna's mind. Now, Gurudev is explaining, in Dwarka, Sri Krishna has 16,000 queens, as well as 8 principal queens, headed by Satyabhama and Rukmini. All of them are Lakshmi Swarup, meaning that they are embodiments of Lakshmi. And if none of these 8 principal queens have the qualification to enter Sri Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, then what can be said about the remaining 16,000 queens? Now in Vrindavan, the gopis' service to Sri Krishna is performed in Parakiya Bhav, the mood of Parama. And in Dwarka, the queens serve him in Swakiya Bhav, wedded love. Prem has 2 aspects. Meeting, which is called Milan, and separation, Viraha. So separation increases the eagerness to meet, and it nourishes that meeting. So when there is only meeting, the waves of the bhavs of Prem do not rise. In Dwarka, the queens are Sri Krishna's lawfully married wives, and there are no social restrictions, societal restrictions, on their meeting with him. They can do so whenever they want. Therefore, their prem lacks an ever freshness. If prem, if prem has a cause, then when the cause breaks, prem also breaks. The Dwarka queens' prem for Sri Krishna is based on their marriage to him. It has a cause, that they're married, right? But the gopis' praying for Sri Krishna does not depend on any societal relationship. They are married to other gopas, but their innate praying is for Sri Krishna. So furthermore, each one of the Dwarka queens has 10 sons and 1 daughter, and their love is therefore divided. But the gopis who enter Ras Leela, those who can enter Ras Leela of the gopis, they do not have any children, nor do they have a relationship with their husband. They have undivided praying for Sri Krishna alone. Furthermore, so when the gopis married, they became wives of others. That's called Paravadhu. Paravadhu. The gopis, when they married, they became wives of others. Paravadhu. Vadhu means wife. Krishna was then a man other than their husband. He's called Para-Parusha, a different man, another man. That other man. Therefore, they could not meet with him of their own accord. There were many obstacles to their meeting with Krishna, such as their husband, mother-in-law, and father-in-law, other family members, and societal conventions. By any trick or excuse, the gopis were forever looking for a chance to meet with him. And Sri Krishna, hiding from his mother, father, and friends, was forever looking for a chance to meet with the gopis. All these obstacles constantly increase the intense eagerness for meeting, milan. And they increase the joy of meeting 1,000,000 times over. This is the thing to understand about Parakiya. Millions of times greater. Sri Krishna is supremely independent. Still, to relish such meetings, he performs such pastimes through his yogamaya potency. To possess the mood of the gopis is the one and only qualification for entering into such Braja pastimes. I mean, once we've heard this explanation of Gurudev, we'll understand forever. What is the speciality? Now,
Maharaj,
yeah.
Did Gurudev say that to relish these pastimes of the gopis was the one qualification?
No, he says to possess the mood of the gopis is the one and only qualification for entering into such Braj pastimes.
Or at least to aspire for the mood.
Huh?
Or to aspire for the mood.
To aspire, yes. To aspire, that's what it's all about. We don't have that, but we aspire. And depending upon the degree of our aspiration, that's to the degree to which we will attain it. That's why Laulyam is the basis. Now, once, after hearing about the glories of Ras Leela, then a longing to also enter Ras Leela awoke within Lakshmi Ji's heart. But because she does not possess the qualification to even enter Vrindavan, she therefore performed austerities for thousands of years on the other side of the Yamuna in Belvan. And at that time, Sri Krishna came and he asked her, "Why are you performing these arduous austerities?" And Lakshmi Ji said, "I want to receive a boon from you to be able to enter the Rasa Leela." Then Sri Krishna says, "Right now, this is not possible for you." "Why not?" Lakshmi Devi asked. Sri Krishna said, "To enter Ras, it is necessary to have the body of a gopi and the identity, the abhiman of a gopi. And at the end of this lifetime, you have to take birth from the womb of a gopi in Vrindavan, and you have to marry a gopa. So after that, once you have submitted yourself to being under the shelter of the Nitya Siddha gopis, and you are situated in the pure abhiman of a gopi, only then will you be able to enter in the Ras Leela, not before." Very clear, Krishna made it. Then he continued, telling Lakshmi, "Those Vraja gopis who have children, they are also unable to enter this Ras, even though they have the bodies of gopis, they're Vraja gopis, but they have children. So they are also unable to enter this Ras. Only those gopis who have no relationship with their husband, they are able to do so. Therefore, how will you be able to enter? For this, you will have to give up your loving feelings for Narayan and your self-conception of being a Brahmani. And you will have to deceive your cowherd husband, and you'll have to adopt the mood of a paramour. And in this way, only after being situated in the mood of a gopi can you enter into Rasa Leela." Now Lakshmi Devi opposed this, saying, how can I abandon my husband Narayan? I cannot give up my chastity and desert him and then marry a cowherd. And Krishna said, until you are prepared to do all this, you will have to wait to enter the Ras Leela, Sri Krishna told her. So for this reason, Lakshmi Ji is performing austerities in Belvan to this very day, but still she has not attained the necessary qualification. Everyone can desire this gopi prem, everyone can desire it, but it is extremely rare that even Lakshmi Ji, Shankar Ji, Brahma Ji, and so on, they cannot attain it. So what to speak of others? So, yes, Lakshmi would not take no for an answer, right?
What about the gopis with children? What's the...
Well, that we'll get into. It'll tell about that. But the point is that Lakshmi Devi, why is she still? Because she told Krishna, no, I can't do that. But anyway, I'm going to do my austerities. She admitted that it's not possible for her to give up Narayan. And then to cheat on him, or then to have another Gopa husband and to cheat on that Gopa husband. It's not possible for her. Because of her abhiman, right? Jai Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Radha Govinda Ji Ki Jai. Can you bring me a cup of water? So, right. Now, in Vrindavan, Sri Krishna's mother and father, friends, and the other gopas, and the motherly gopis, they have so much love for him. But here, Sri Swarup Damodar describes only his beloved gopis.
That's good.
Yeah. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there is the following description. And this is in the 14th chapter of 10th canto. Baho bhagyam, nanda gopa vrajokasam. Yan mitram paramanandam puranam brahma sanatanam. Oh, how greatly fortunate are Nanda Maharaj. He's saying, Aho Bhagyam. Bhagyam means fortunate. And he says it twice. Aho Bhagyam, Aho Bhagyam. How fortunate, how fortunate. All the gopas and the gopis, the animals, the birds, and all the other living entities residing in Braja. There is actually no limit to their good fortune, because the abode of Paramananda, supreme bliss, the eternal and complete Parabrahma, he has descended among them, and he has become their friend. So this is expressing the good fortune of every living entity in Braj. So all the gopas, they also serve Sri Krishna. Nanda Baba serves him as his father. Gargacharya, Bhagwari Muni, Shandilya Rishi, and others, they offer him blessings as his gurus. Sudama, Subal, Madhumangal, Sri Baladev Prabhu, they also serve him in a male form. But no one in a male body can perform the kind of service Srimati Radhika performs, and therefore all males are forbidden to enter that place where Sri Krishna is engaged in pastimes with Srimati Radhika and the gopis. Some sakas, such as Madhumangal, Subala Saka, Kokila, Bringa, and other Priya Narma sakas, who have a semblance of Mahabhav. It's important, because that was one argument of our Sakya Ras people. But they also experience Mahabhav. No, they don't experience Mahabhav. A semblance. So they assist these pastimes of Sri Krishna, but only from a distance. because they are also forbidden from entering the kunjas. And on the other hand, all the gopis, they can enter the kunjas. Therefore, Sri Swarup Damodar said that apart from the gopis, no one has the eligibility to steal Sri Krishna's heart and to reign over it. Imagine, stealing Krishna's heart and then reigning over. Sri Krishna also confirms this statement in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Guess what? That confirmation statement coming from Krishna's own mouth regarding the gopis. Yes. Na paraeham niravadya samyujam svasadu krityam vibudayu sapiva ya ma bhajan durjaya geha shrinkala samvrishya tadva pratiyatu sadhuna. My darling gopis. And when did he say this?
He said it after he'd come out from hiding during the gopi.
That's right. My darling gopis, your meeting me is faultless, and it is pure in every respect. It is devoid of even a single iota of desire for your own happiness, and it is full of supremely pure love. You have demolished the tenacious bonds of household life, and having transgressed the moral laws of this world, you have lovingly served me. And even if I obtain a span of life like that of the gods, I would be unable to requite even one drop of your love, sacrifice, and service. All of you may free me from this debt simply by your own gentle nature, but I am forever the debtor of your praying and will always continue to be. So Sri Krishna has never said this to anyone but the gopis. So it is for this reason that Swarup Damodar has described the gopis only. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is most munificent. He is Mahavadanya. And he descended to this earthly plane to bestow this very gopi prem. If an intense hankering to perform service within the Ras Lila of the divine couple, Sri Sri Radha Krishna, awakens within anyone, then that person will obtain the good fortune of entering this Ras. Only for awakening such longing within the jivas does Srimad Mahaprabhu send so many great personalities, Mahapurushas, to this world, such as Sri Swarup Damodar, Rai Ramananda, Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, and his personal associates, his parikars, such as Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami. So,
only to awaken this knowledge.
Yes. Only for awakening such longing within the jivas does Srimad Mahaprabhu send so many Mahapurushas like this. I remember the first time when I saw Srila Prabhupada in Detroit, 1971, beginning of the summer. And I distinctly, I've mentioned this many, many times over the years, because I can't remember much of the 3 days that he spent with us, I mean, in terms of what he spoke, because we were always completely awestruck by whatever Srila Prabhupada said, you know. It was hard to remember. Somebody asked you, what did Prabhupada say? You know, he said everything. So on this particular day, evening time, there was this painting. You know how they used to have these long paintings? Shamrani describes that in her art book, in her Art of Spiritual Life book. How Prabhupada wanted, you know, very large paintings to adorn the walls of his temples. So they started painting like, you know, 8 feet long by 5 feet high, really long paintings. And so there was this painting of, it was a copy of one of the Brijbasi prints that was depicting the famous picture of Radha and Krishna standing in a garden area with the Astasakis on both sides. And one is holding a tambura, and one is playing mridanga, like that. So anyway, in Prabhupada's lecture that evening, he mentioned, I remember him saying, he said, the goal of this Krishna consciousness movement, because this was showing, like in Prabhupada's mind, this is Vrindavan, this is the Ras Lila, the Rasa dance, you know. And so Srila Prabhupada said that the purpose of this Krishna consciousness movement is to bring every living entity into the eternal Ras Lila of Radha and Krishna. You see. So even Prabhupada was implanting at that time, but we would have to wait many years for the Chaitanya Charitamrita to come. Then we would have to try to read the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Then we would have to wait many more years until personalities like Srila Bhakti Rakshak, Sridhar Maharaj, Srila Gurudev, Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj came. And then they put everything into proper perspective. So, now, Srimad Mahaprabhu desires to know the cause of Lakshmi Devi's anger. So, he asked this question, Prabhu kahe, Yatra chale Krishnera gamana, Subhadra ara Baladev sange dui jana. Srimad Mahaprabhu asked, again he asked Sri Swarup Damodar a question. On the pretext of Rath Yatra, Sri Krishna went with Sri Baladev Prabhu and Sri Subhadra Devi to Gundicha Mandir in Vrindavan, which is Vrindavan, Gundicha. And he went there on the pretext of the Rath Yatra to meet with Yashoda Maya, Nanda Baba, the Gopas, the Gopis, and the rest of the Brijbasis. He took Sri Baladev Prabhu and Sri Subhadraji along with him, so that Lakshmi would not suspect that he has gone to Vrindavan. And Sri Baladev Prabhu had lived with Sri Krishna in Braja until the age of 11. And Sri Subhadraji has great feelings of affection for the gopis. So therefore, Sri Krishna took them with him. He first went to Nanda Bhavan and met with his parents. And after that, he left Baladev and Subhadra there, and he went alone to his beloved gopis. Sri Baladev and Subhadraji, they cannot understand Sri Krishna's confidential pastimes with the gopis, nor do they know that during the day, having made an excuse to the sakhas, and during the night, without anyone coming to know, he sometimes goes to Vamshivat, sometimes to Sevakunj, sometimes to Sanket, sometimes to Radhakunda, to meet alone with the gopis. So, does Baladev and Subhadra know? No. By Yoga Maya, they don't know. Playing with the gopis in these places, sometimes he swings on swings, and sometimes he is defeated by them in games, and sometimes the gopis stealthily steal his flute. Sometimes he plays water sports with the gopis in Shyamakund and Radhakund. So in this way, Sri Krishna performs many confidential, sweet pastimes with the gopis. So here's a verse being quoted. Gopi sange jato lila hoy upavane, niguda Krishner bhav keho nahi jane. No one can understand the confidential moods of Krishna in all the pastimes that take place with the gopis in the kunjas. So who can understand Krishna's secret meeting with the gopis in the kunjas? No one can understand all these confidential moods. Even Yashoda Maya does not know about these confidential pastimes. Only Yoga Maya, Purnamasi Devi, Vrinda Devi, Dhanishta, and Kundalata, etc., they know of them. Sri Krishna's Priyanarma Sakhas, such as Subal and Madhumangal, They know something about them. But even then, they do not have entrance in those pastimes. So therefore, Sri Subhadra Devi and Sri Baladev Prabhu, they cannot understand why Sri Krishna has come to Vrindavan. Lakshmi Devi was thinking that Sri Jagannath was wandering about with Sri Baladev Prabhu and Subhadra, and that he would soon return to Dwarka. So here's the verse. Ataeva Krishner prakatye nahi kichu dosh, tabe kene Lakshmi Devi kore eta rosh. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked, therefore, since Sri Jagannath has not committed any perceivable offense to Sri Lakshmi, why does she become so angry with him? That's the question.
Who's asking?
This is Mahaprabhu asking to Swarup Damodar. Okay? He didn't really do anything wrong, but she's become angry. So Swarup Damodar replied, Swarup kahe, prem batir eto svabhav. Kantera audasya leshe hoy krodhabhav. So he says, it is natural for a girl wrapped in love to become angry upon her lover, showing her the slightest bit of neglect. This is why Lakshmi Ji was in Man. So then there's 3 verses here, 4 verses. Heno kale kachita jahe vivida ratan suvarnera chaudola kari arohan. So I'll just read the English. At that moment, everyone saw that Lakshmi Devi came there riding on a gold and gem-studded palanquin. Her maid servants accompanied her, carrying umbrellas, chamras, and flags. The other maid servants were playing various musical instruments, and the Devadasis were dancing. Hundreds of maid servants surrounded her on all sides, carrying boxes of pan, betel nuts, small water containers with a spout for sprinkling water, fans and chamras. These maid servants, they were all adorned with divine ornaments and with her many associates, and exhibiting vast opulence. Lakshmi Devi came to the Singhadwara filled with anger. Jagannather mukya jato britya gane Lakshmi Devir dasi gana karena bandhane. On the order of Lakshmi Ji, her maid servants grabbed the chief servants of Sri Jagannath. They began to bind them with ropes, and they threw them at Lakshmi Devi's feet. She proceeded to punish them as if they had stolen a vast amount of wealth. Those maid servants assailed them with many abuses and also harsh words, as if Jagannath's servants were ignorant fools. Seeing the boldness and the expertise of Lakshmi Devi and her associates, Mahaprabhu and his associates covered their mouth and they began to laugh. Now, Lakshmi departs for Gundicha Mandir. After this, Lakshmi Ji began to move towards Sri Gundicha Mandir along with her maidservants. Srimad Mahaprabhu, also accompanied by all his devotees, followed just behind to see the bhavs of Lakshmi Devi. Now Sri Swarup Damodar said, never before have I seen or heard of such astonishing man anywhere within the 3 worlds. Usually a woman in man becomes morose, throws off all her ornaments, and she sits on the ground. Because she is filled with anger and distress, she looks dejected. She begins to write something by scratching her nails on the ground. Previously, when Satyabhamaji had exhibited man, her condition was just like this. So what can be said of the man of the gopis? Their man is the treasury. It is the crown jewel of rasa. But here, in the case of Lakshmi Ji, the exact opposite is shown. Bedecked in all her wealth and her opulence, she and her army have prepared to make an attack on her beloved. What kind of man is this? So now Srimad Mahaprabhu asked this question, how many kinds of man are there in the Braj Gopis? So this is where the discussion takes off. Sri Swarup Damodar said, the Gopis' man is of hundreds of types. There are many divisions of heroines, and according to their nature and the propensity of their prem, man arises in the heroine in accordance with those divisions. It is not possible to describe all the different types of man, and therefore I can give only a general overview by describing a few divisions. The gopi's man is sometimes aroused by a cause, and sometimes without any cause. Man is an advanced stage of prem that manifests after sthai bhav, one's permanent sentiment is attained. There are 5 kinds of sthai bhav, and they never change. And when vibhav, anubhav, sattvic bhav, and vyabhichari bhav, when they all mix together on the platform of the sthai bhav, then bhakti rasa is produced. In the sadhak's heart, first rati arises, and then after some time, by the mercy of the ragatmik bhaktas of Goloka Vrindavan, then the permanent foundation of prem, sthai bhav, manifests in his heart. What is the nature of prem? Even when there is every reason for the prem to break, it only increases more and more. In prem, there is not even the slightest trace of desire for one's own happiness. The gopis' objective is simply to please Sri Krishna, and Sri Krishna's objective is to please the gopis. The mutual love of the conditioned souls of this world is not selfless, and therefore when there is just a little harm to one's self-interest, the connection of love breaks. After prem comes to the stage of sneha, in which the devotee's heart melts. Immediately, it melts upon seeing Sri Krishna, and the streams of tears continuously flow from his eyes. There are 2 kinds of sneha, Grita sneha and Madhu sneha. Srimati Radhika and the Sakhis in her group, they have Madhu sneha. And Chandravali and the Sakhis in her group have Grita sneha. Madhu means honey and Grita means like ghee. So the gopis with Madhu sneha, they possess the mood that Krishna is theirs, Krishna is mine. Whereas the gopis with Grita sneha think, I am Krishna's. Then after sneha, the mood of pranay arises, in which the gopis' sneha increases so much that they consider themselves and Krishna to be one soul in 2 bodies. And after pranay comes the stage of man. But sometimes man arises before the stage of pranay. So the gopis have a firm conviction that if they go into man, then Sri Krishna will surely come to pacify them. This alone is the purpose of their man. There are unlimited moods within Srimati Radhika, but among them 360 are prominent moods in Srimati Radhika. And therefore there are basically 360 kinds of gopis. So each gopi has a different mood, and all the moods are embodied in Srimati Radhika. All the gopis are her kaya vyuha, her direct expansions, and their moods manifest by her desire. So Lalita is prakara, she's very bold and outspoken. And some gopis are gentle and sober, dhira. And some are restless, adira. So when Sri Swarup Damodar explained all this, Srimad Mahaprabhu said, I want to hear about the bhavs that are beyond this. Then Swarup Damodar said, when those gopis who have the mood that I belong to Krishna are in man, they do not speak cutting words to him, they just weep. But however, when the gopis who have the mood Krishna is mine, when they exhibit man, then with tears flowing from their eyes and being filled with anger, they pierce Krishna with the arrows of their harsh words. Once, when Sri Krishna went to Radhaji, his face and his arms bore black and red marks. Seeing this, Radhaji thought that these marks were from his amorous play, his vilas, with other gopis. She then exhibited man. With sarcasm, she sweetly said, Oh, you have come. You look most exhausted. Please rest for a little while. She gave him a place to sit and she shot a sidelong glance at his face. "You are looking very beautiful. You look just like Mahadev Shankarji," she told to him. Nila Rohita Rudra Shankarji's complexion is a combination of blue, black, and red. So in this way, Sri Radhaji compared Sri Krishna to Shankarji. Srimad Mahaprabhu and Srila Swarup Damodar Goswami became so absorbed in discussing the moods of the Brajvasis that they did not even notice that Lakshmi Ji's chariot had reached the Gundicha Mandir. So now the pastime of Lakshmi Devi arriving at Gundicha Mandir is being described. When Lakshmi realized that Sri Krishna had left Nilachala, Dwarka, to go to Sundarachala, Vrindavan, her anger suddenly increased. Now Srivas Thakur enters the discussion. He said to Swarup Damodar, "My dear friend, just see the extent of the unlimited opulence of my Lakshmi Ji. Vrindavan's treasure merely consists of some flowers, creepers, minerals from the hills, peacock feathers, and gunja berries. In Vrindavan, Sri Krishna does not even have a gold crown on his head. He bears only a flute made of bamboo, a peacock feather, pitambara, and a flower garland." Then Srivas continued, "Upon hearing that Sri Jagannath Ji has gone to see that Vrindavan, the heart of my Swamini, Sri Lakshmi, has become saddened. So, why has Sri Jagannath gone to see Vrindavan, leaving behind so much wealth and opulence? Just to make a mockery of this, Lakshmi Ji has set out with her entire opulence and wealth." Then the maidservants of Lakshmi Ji said to the servants of Lord Jagannath, "Your master Jagannath, abandoning the great opulence of Lakshmi Ji, he went into the flower garden, greedy for some leaves, fruits, and flowers. Your master is the crest jewel of the clever, so why is he showing such foolishness? Very quickly, present your master before Lakshmi Devi." Then saying this, the maidservants of Lakshmi arrested the servants of Jagannath, bound them by throwing cloth around their waist. Then they brought them to Lakshmi and made them offer pranam at her feet. So as punishment, they took their wealth and they had them make a humble entreaty to her. They even beat Sri Jagannath's chariot with sticks. They treated Jagannath's servants just like thieves. And finally, Lord Sri Jagannath's servants came before Lakshmi Devi with folded hands and said, "We will bring Lord Jagannath before you tomorrow." So having fined and punished Sri Jagannath's servants, Lakshmi Devi, upon hearing them make this promise, released them. And they went to her abode pacified. So Srivas Pandit said to Sri Swarup Damodar, "It is not possible to describe my Lakshmi Ji's wealth in words. Your gopis make ghee, yogurt, butter, and so forth from the milk of their cows. This is how they make their livelihood. They live in kunjas, in bowers, not in the big palaces of Mathura and Dwarka. They make their ornaments from forest flowers, whereas Dwarkavasis have ornaments of gold, pearls, diamonds, and jewels. And my Thakurani sits on a jeweled throne." Now, hearing the words of Srivas Pandit, who was in the mood of Sri Narada Ji, the devotees of Srimad Mahaprabhu burst out laughing. And Srimad Mahaprabhu said, "Srivas, your nature is like that of Sri Narada. By the Lord's influence, you are only attracted to the mood of opulence, Aishwarya. But this Swarup Damodar is a pure Brajvasi. He does not know Aishwarya. He simply remains immersed in pure praying." And then Swarup Damodar said, "Srivas, just listen attentively. Do you know the transcendental opulence of Vrindavan? The natural opulence of Vrindavan is vast like an ocean. The opulence of Dwarka and Vaikuntha is not equal to even a drop of that ocean." Then they quote the verse from Brahma Samhita, Shriya Kanta Kanta. So, however much opulence the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, has, is fully manifested in his own abode, Vrindavan. There the earth is made of wish-fulfilling Chintamani jewels. Houses are made of jewels. Even the maidservants that wear ankle bells made of Chintamani gems. There all the trees are desire trees, Kalpavriksha. But the Brajvasis, They only desire fruits and flowers from them. The limitless cows there are all wish-fulfilling cows, kamadhenus, but the Brajbasis beg only milk from them, not any other kind of wealth. The Brajbasis' ordinary speech is song, and their natural walk is a dance. And the water of that abode is nectar. With its own transcendental radiance, that abode illuminates itself. The Lakshmis there, that is the gopis, they defeat the Lakshmi of Vaikuntha and Dwarka with their astonishing qualities. And there, Sri Krishna's Vamshi flute itself performs the activities of a dearmost friend. Krishna is the crown jewel among connoisseurs of rasa. He is a rasika shekhar, and that is why he wants to relish the rasa of unnata ujjvala prem, with the love, resplendent with the love of the gopis. He is not fully satisfied by any other sentiment of love. This unnata ujjvala rasa is only within the gopis of Vrindavan, and therefore, leaving aside the opulence displayed in the abode of Dwarka, Sri Krishna always resides in Vrindavan, which is full of Madhurya. So upon hearing the glories of Vrindavan from Sri Swarup Damodar, Srivas Pandit's mood changed. He became absorbed in the mood of Madhumangal, Sri Krishna's dear Sakha in Braj. Then absorbed in the mood of Braj, he began to dance and loudly laugh while making a funny sound by squeezing air out of his armpit with his cupped hand. And after hearing the glories of the pure prem of Sri Radhaji, Sriman Mahaprabhu too became even more immersed in prem. He began to dance, and Sri Swarup Damodar began to perform kirtan. So now we'll finish because of the artik, and there's more, not too much more, but there's a bit more. The difference between the mood of Aishwarya and Madhurya. So we'll finish that tomorrow. Gaur Premanand. Shri Lakshmi Vijay Festival ki jai, Hera Panchami ki jai, Swarup Damodar Goswami Pad ki jai, Srivas Thakur ki jai, Shri Sachinandana Gaura Hari ki jai, Shri Jagannath Deva ki jai, Jagannath Rath Yatra ki jai, Gundicha Mandir ki jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Shri Gopi Gana ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Vancha Kalpadurubhascha Kripa Sindhu Devacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.